Well, it is the second week of the bye week this week, which means we need to go through and look at another 6 clubs for their mid-season AFL reviews. Now, in today's video, we'll be having a look at West Coast and Geelong, and it must be said, of the top 4, we're looking at 2 completely different sides of a coin. Geelong being, the team to beat in the competition, and West Coast, right up until today, actually, I thought were probably a close second. But alas, we're going to dive deep into why I am having regrets about that statement and, how good Geelong actually are going. So without any further ado, my name is Ryan from AFL Access, and this is 2019 mid-season review for West Coast Eagles and Geelong Cats. So West Coast come into the year as the reigning premiers of 2018, and it should be said that they started the year pretty scratchy with a huge loss to Brisbane. In fact, most of their losses this year have come by big margins. After their loss to Brisbane, they did go on to win 2 games against GWS and Collingwood, who happened to make up the other top 4. But they did go on to lose as well to Geelong down in Geelong in a really big way. Getting back on top of their season, they win 5 games in a row and have just gone down to Sydney, a venue that they haven't won at in 20 years, by a whopping 45-point margin, which does not install confidence within the group. However, it should be noted that they were missing their captain and, probably best on-ball player, Elliot Yeo, and that really did hurt them. The way that they were moving the ball and the way that their defense hasn't looked that bad for a while. Their defense has actually been probably the one positive out of all year, and it's been their midfield and at times their forward line has been a disappointment, but their back line has been the real stable mark of this team, and that wasn't displayed over the weekend, which raises a lot of questions within the group as to just how mentally resilient they are. Now, I'm not going to suggest that they're out of the premiership hunt. That would be completely ridiculous. They are still in the top 4, and as recording this, they are going to remain in the top 4 at the end of the round because Collingwood and Melbourne have still yet to play, and doesn't matter whatever the outcome of that match is, nothing's going to change the position of West Coast. So let's have a look at West Coast's 5 next upcoming games and see how they can launch into the back end of the year to try and defend their premiership. They open up round 14 on a Thursday night against the Bombers at Optus Stadium. Next up comes a tough task at the MCG against the Hawks. Their third run of games comes against the Dockers at Optus Stadium, which does alleviate some travel. They then play the Pies at Optus on back-to-back Optus games, so they don't have to travel against the runners-up of last year. And finally, they play Melbourne at Darwin this year, a venue that the Eagles very rarely play at. In fact, I think they may have only played there 1 or 2 times before. So of their next 5 games, I do actually see them winning potentially all 5 of them. We mentioned on Footy Rivals last week on Thursday that West Coast actually has the 5th easiest run on the run home to the finals, and this does pave the way for them to build enough wins to be able to secure a top 4 spot. It should be noted that the loss against Sydney is actually a huge blow to locking down top 2, especially with other fellow top 4 aspirants falling over the hurdles. GWS went down and Richmond went down over the weekend, and Collingwood is yet to be seen whether they prevail against Melbourne or not. A top 2 open spot was up for grabs, or potentially up for grabs, and they let that go by a big margin, and considering their percentage was not great to begin with, they actually enter the bye round with only 103%, which is not particularly healthy. This is unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, a bit of a wake-up call to the West Coast team. This can either do one of 2 things. Now, considering they've had big loss margins so far this year, I don't think it's going to affect their confidence too much, as they have been able to bounce back relatively well. However, in saying that, I don't think it's going to spark them into any kind of winning form either. This loss actually has me questioning West Coast's credentials to back up its premiership defence. Leading into the weekend and over the back of the 5 wins that were steadily growing in form, West Coast did look to be the clear second favourite against Geelong. However, I don't see that to be the case anymore. A grading for West Coast in the first half of the year is quite tricky because they've been very patchy. They've been good, they've been really poor as well. Given expectations in the preseason and everything, I would have to give them a C-. They get just below a pass mark for me. A pass mark would have, they probably would have been sitting at around about a C+ to a B had they beaten Sydney, but the loss to Sydney and in the way that they lost that game, as well as the fact that they've lost other games by big margins, does not a premiership credential make. And that is my grading for West Coast. Ah, boy. Could I have been any more wrong with regards to Geelong's pre-season preview? I think I had placed them around about 14th coming into the year, and I said as such in my in my previews. Over the coming weeks, there have been plenty of people let me know how bad of a call that was in the comments of that video, to which I've just, laughed it off and going, yeah, we got that one wrong, definitely got that one wrong. Geelong are by far and away the form team of the competition. There is absolutely no questioning their credentials at the moment. Their last test was against Richmond over the weekend, and they definitely met that. I will say this though, they do come a little bit unstuck when up against pressure. We did see that against Richmond in the first quarter. However, Richmond then decided to not be Richmond anymore and be, what they have been for most of this year, and that is kind of disappointing. And they let up on that pressure and they just let Geelong have free reign of the ball and do whatever they like. Their second and third quarters are probably the best football you'll ever watch this year so far. It was just pure football, and you can see that the Geelong players are very much enjoying the game at the moment, and there are a lot of similarities to the way that they are playing in terms of enjoyment of the game as what West Coast were like last year, with the reinvigoration of youth into the team. And you can definitely see that not only on the field but off the field in interviews and stuff as well. It's very evident that youth is having a huge impact on this team. So clearly Geelong sit 2 games clear on top of the ladder, which is a huge buffer coming into the back end of the year, which does pit them as a very good likelihood at finishing in the top spot and potentially even playing a home final in Geelong this year, considering Collingwood is a very good chance to finish second place, which then puts a game at the MCG. Now, Geelong only play games at the MCG if there are no other games in Melbourne. At least that is to my knowledge, but if I am wrong on that, let me know in the comments below. I'm sure you'll let me know if I've got that wrong anyway, but I'm pretty sure Geelong only ever play games in Melbourne if there are no other games in Melbourne that weekend for finals. I may be wrong, but just let me know. Geelong's next 5 games are as follows. They come back into round 14 on a Saturday night against Port Adelaide. However, they do have to travel to the Adelaide Oval. That's followed up against their crosstown rival, the Crows, down in Geelong, which should be an automatic win. The Bulldogs at Marvel Stadium. They then have 2 home games in Geelong and at the MCG against St Kilda, and then followed up by the Hawks. Now, I do see them winning all 5 of these games, which then sits them pretty. In fact, for the rest of the season, I have them dropping maybe 1, maybe 2 games, depending on how the Dockers are faring, considering their team is injury riddled. I really only see them potentially dropping to Sydney in Sydney, and that's only because Sydney is starting to actually play better than they were at the start of the year, which is, a discussion for later and for someone else to cover this week. Geelong this year seem to be a completely different team compared to yesteryear. The reliance on Joel Selwood is no longer there as he's moved to a wing position, which has seen him not in the coalface and not consistently getting bashed up anymore, and maybe a masterstroke move just to lengthen his career a bit more. Since the move, he's definitely taking less hits and he's looked fresher than ever. He's not as dominant as he was before, but he's looking fresher and more on top of his legs, which is great to see. There's no longer a reliance on Dangerfield within that midfield anymore. However, Tim Kelly potentially leaving at the end of the year may result in them going back to that formula next year. However, whilst they're in the crux of a premiership hunt, it is much better to use Dangerfield to his best and not necessarily have the burden completely on his shoulders. Let him burst out of packs through stages as opposed to constantly having to try to do it all the time. Tom Hawkins is looking great up forward. In fact, he's looking like he was about 5 years ago. He's dominating up the forward. He's leading up very well. He's looking the type of player he was before his back injury was really hampering him a few years ago. Maybe that was perhaps hampering him a little bit over the last few years, but he's looking really fresh. He's looking really strong this year as well, and he's definitely looking to lead that forward line. Now, it should be noted at this point that Geelong have by far and away the best attacking football in the competition. In fact, they outscore the next best by 50 points. On the back of that, Geelong have the second stingiest defence in the competition, mind you, in saying that this is after looking at the ladder from today, which is Sunday night, where Geelong have played an extra game compared to Fremantle, and they only 13 points more conceded than what Fremantle are. So in saying that, Geelong do definitely have the best defence in the competition as well as the best attack in the competition, and having those two combinations as best and best is a very rare thing to happen in AFL footy. Normally you have the best attack and third best defence, or third best defence or best defence and like fourth best attack or something like that. It's very rare to actually have the best of the attack and the best of the defence, and that just really showcases that the Geelong games that they're playing in are not all blowouts to the point where everything's just free scoring, free flowing, and whoever can score most is best off. It screams of a team that is looking to control the ball, to control defence, and control the tempo of the game at their will. They're able to go fast, they're able to go slow. In fact, they're one of the slowest moving ball teams of the entire competition. Now, based on my preseason predictions, Geelong are sitting at an A+ for this year so far. I had them missing finals altogether, and they are a lock for finals now. Unless they lose every single game at the back end of the year, they're playing finals. You can lock that one in, Eddie. Thank you so much for watching. If you do like the reviews, then let us know in the comments below. Let us know if I got anything wrong, whether there's something that I could have added more to. All feedback is considered. Don't forget to join our Discord as well. Link will be in the description below. We love having chats with you as well as talking to you while games are being played out. It's especially fun on the weekends when Justin and I have our certainties on the line and we're trying to have our teams not lose, and it's a load of fun. So get on board with that and join us in there and join in on the fun with that one. Don't forget, guys, if you did like the video, please do leave a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell down below. It means a lot, and you get notified when we do release new content almost on a daily basis at the moment, and when we go live with Footy Rivals on a Thursday. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, this has been your AFL Access.